A $10 billion deal, my career, my future. All of it hung by a thread until the quiet, unassuming driver I'd spent the morning insulting revealed he was far more than just the help. The rain was hitting the window of the Mercedes with a rhythm that matched the frantic ticking of my watch. Tick-tack, splash, tick-tack, splash. Each sound was a little hammer chipping away at my composure. I was on my way to the most important meeting of my life, the culmination of an 18-month blood, sweat, and tears battle to acquire a European tech conglomerate. $10 billion, a deal that would make my career, that would cement my name in the annals of corporate history. And here I was, stuck in Zurich traffic, at the mercy of a driver who seemed to be a permanent resident of the slow lane. "Can you possibly go any faster?" I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. I didn't look up from my tablet, where I was reviewing the final projections for the 10th time. From the driver's seat, a quiet voice replied, "The traffic is quite dense, ma'am. I'm taking the most efficient route." Ma'am, I hated that. It was so servile, so common. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. His name was Ben, or something equally forgettable. He was in his late 40s, maybe, with a kind, weathered face and a jacket that looked like it had seen better decades. He was the kind of man who disappears into the background, a piece of functional furniture. He was just the driver. "The most efficient route is currently costing me about $1 million a minute," I said, letting the sarcasm drip from every word. "Perhaps you're not familiar with the concept of urgency." He didn't reply, just tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I saw his knuckles go white for a second. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the pressure I was under. My phone buzzed and my boss's name Richard flashed on the screen. I answered immediately. "Amelia, we have a problem," he said, his voice strained. "A big one. Dubois' team just sent a communiqué. They're citing irreconcilable cultural dissonance and are threatening to walk." My blood ran cold. "What?" "That's garbage. It's a negotiation tactic. They're trying to squeeze us for a better price at the 11th hour." "I don't think so," Richard countered. "This feels different. They claim our final proposal was insulting to their Japanese and Emirati partners. Something about the phrasing. That's impossible. I vetted every word with our translation team," I hissed, acutely aware of the driver listening in. I lowered my voice. "They're looking for an excuse. Dubois is a shark." "Well, you're the shark hunter," Richard said, offering no comfort. "Fix it, Amelia. This deal dies, and we both know who corporate will blame." The line went dead. I felt a tremor of pure panic run through me. I'd built this entire deal on a foundation of meticulous preparation, and now it was crumbling because of some fabricated offense. I looked back at the driver in the mirror. He was just staring ahead, his expression placid, humming some soft, unidentifiable tune. The sheer ordinariness of him in that moment infuriated me. My world was collapsing, and this man was probably thinking about what he was going to have for dinner. "It must be nice," I said, unable to stop myself, "to just drive. No pressure, no stakes. Your biggest decision of the day is whether to take the tunnel or the bridge." He met my eyes in the mirror for a brief second. There was something in them, not anger, not sadness, but something I couldn't quite read. A deep, still patience. "Everyone has their own road, ma'am," he said, his voice still infuriatingly calm. I scoffed. "Right. And some of us are building empires, and others are just driving through them." We finally pulled up to the gleaming glass tower that housed Dubois' headquarters. I practically threw the door open before the car had fully stopped. "Wait here," I commanded, not even bothering to look back at him. "And don't touch the radio." I strode into the lobby, a warrior marching into battle. But the moment I stepped into the 50th floor boardroom, I knew Richard was right. The air was arctic. The Swiss, Japanese, and Emirati teams were arrayed on one side of the vast mahogany table, a united front of stony-faced opposition. Their lead negotiator, the formidable Mr. Dubois, gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Vance," he said in crisp, accented English, "thank you for coming, though I fear you have wasted a trip." Before I could even formulate a response, the door opened and my local liaison rushed in, his face pale. "Amelia," he whispered frantically, "our translator, she's not coming." Dubois' team hired her on an exclusive contract this morning. It was sabotage. We can't get another one here for at least 2 hours. My heart stopped. This was it. The final blow. The entire negotiation hinged on nuance, on bridging the cultural gaps that Dubois was now using as a weapon. Without a translator, I was dead in the water. I was publicly, professionally humiliated. My mind raced, searching for any solution, any way out. There was none. I could feel the $10 billion prize, my entire future slipping through my fingers like sand. A wave of nausea hit me. I stumbled back out of the room, leaning against the wall in the hallway, trying to breathe. My career was over. Through the open door I could hear the agitated chatter from within. Dubois was speaking rapid-fire French to his colleague, who then turned and relayed something in clipped Japanese to Mr. Tanaka, while Ms. Al-Jamil was on her phone, speaking in sharp, flowing Arabic. It was a symphony of my failure. Suddenly, a quiet figure stood in front of me. It was Ben, my driver. He was holding my leather portfolio, which I must have dropped. "You forgot this, ma'am," he said softly. I was about to scream at him, to tell him to get out, to leave me alone in my disgrace. But before I could get a word out, he tilted his head, listening to the cacophony coming from the boardroom. His brow furrowed for a moment in concentration. Then he looked past me, directly at Mr. Dubois, who was visible through the doorway. In flawless Parisian French, Ben's calm, steady voice cut through the air. "Monsieur Dubois," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "Perhaps the misunderstanding stems not from insult, but from an overly literal translation of Anglo-American corporate parlance. The term final offer is often a starting point for the true final discussion, is it not?" The boardroom fell silent. So silent I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Every eye, Swiss, Japanese, Emirati, and my own, was fixed on Ben, my driver. Mr. Dubois' eyebrows shot up into his hairline. He stared at Ben, not with the condescension one reserves for a servant, but with the sharp, appraising look of a predator encountering an unknown species. Ben didn't flinch. He simply inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect that was neither subservient nor challenging. Then he turned his attention to Mr. Tanaka, who was staring at him with undisguised astonishment. Ben bowed, not a deep, subservient bow, but a short, crisp one that was perfectly executed. In flawless, formal Japanese he spoke. His voice was measured and respectful, a stark contrast to the aggressive business speak I was used to. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. It was a tone of deep consideration, of honoring a long-term perspective. He spoke of mutual benefit not as a transaction, but as the shared construction of a legacy. Mr. Tanaka's rigid posture softened, almost imperceptibly. He exchanged a look with his aide, a flicker of reassessment in his eyes. Before the room could fully process this, Ben turned to Ms. Al-Jamil. His demeanor shifted again. The formality was replaced by a warm gravity. He placed a hand over his heart and spoke in smooth, melodic Arabic. The words flowed like water, and while I was again lost, I saw Miss Al-Jamil, a woman who had looked at me with cold disdain, lean forward, her attention completely captured. A colleague later told me he'd used a proverb about a river, carving its own path to the sea, patiently and with purpose, likening it to our proposed partnership. It was poetry. It was diplomacy. It was brilliant. My mind was a kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions. Shock was the primary color, but it was quickly being overwhelmed by a tidal wave of shame. The things I had said to him in the car. "Your biggest decision is whether to take the tunnel or the bridge." The memory burned like acid. I had dismissed him, belittled him, treated him as less than human. And here he was, this man I had deemed insignificant, single-handedly resurrecting my $10 billion deal with an arsenal of languages and a level of cultural dexterity I couldn't even fathom. Dubois finally found his voice. He gestured towards Ben, looking at me. "Who is this man?" he demanded, his English sharp. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. What could I say? "He's my driver, whom I've been treating like dirt for the past hour." Ben answered for me. He reverted to perfect, unaccented English. "My name is Ben. I am Miss Vance's associate, he said calmly. He then looked at me, a subtle signal. She is the architect of this deal. I am merely here to ensure her vision is not lost in misinterpretation. He handed me my portfolio, and in that simple act he handed the power in the room back to me. He had built the bridge. Now I had to walk across it. My paralysis broke. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and stepped forward. "Thank you, Ben," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "As my associate has clarified, our intent was never to insult, but to propose a robust and mutually beneficial future. There has clearly been a misunderstanding, one I would like to rectify immediately." Dubois watched us, a slow, predatory smile returning to his face. He was intrigued. The game was afoot again, but the rules had changed. "Very well, Miss Vance," he said. "Let us talk." For the next 2 hours we did. It was the most extraordinary negotiation I had ever been a part of. Ben was a phantom, moving between languages and cultures with breathtaking ease. He didn't just translate my words, he transmuted them. He would listen to my aggressive American-style business proposals, then soften the edges for the Japanese, add a layer of aspirational ambition for the Emiratis, and frame it with logical precision for the Swiss. I watched mesmerized as he fielded a question in German from one of Dubois' team, clarified a technical point in Italian with another, and even shared a brief, light-hearted exchange in what sounded like Russian with one of the junior analysts. He was a human Rosetta Stone. The hostility in the room melted away, replaced by a palpable current of progress and, dare I say it, respect. We were close. I could feel it. The finish line was in sight. Finally, Dubois leaned back, steepling his fingers. "All right, Miss Vance. Your associate has been most persuasive. We are prepared to accept your revised offer with one final condition." He laid out a complex profit-sharing model, which was aggressive but acceptable. I nodded, my heart pounding. We had done it. Then he turned to his lead counsel, a stern-looking man from Bern. Dubois switched to a language I had never heard before, a rapid guttural dialect filled with complex consonants. It wasn't the clean German Ben had spoken earlier. It sounded older, more intricate. He spoke for a solid minute, gesturing animatedly. His counsel nodded, a grim smile on his face. Dubois turned back to me, his eyes gleaming with challenge. "My colleague has outlined a small final legal addendum, a local matter. Your associate can surely explain it." The entire room turned to Ben. The silence was absolute. For the first time all afternoon, the mask of serene confidence on Ben's face slipped. A flicker of something I couldn't identify. Hesitation, uncertainty crossed his features. He stared at the lawyer from Bern, his brow furrowed in intense concentration. The lawyer just smiled, a smug, knowing look on his face. Ben remained silent. 1 second. 2. 5. The $10 billion deal hung suspended in the suffocating quiet, entirely dependent on a language he apparently did not know. The smug smile on the lawyer's face widened. Dubois leaned forward, the scent of victory in the air. He thought he had found the chink in the armor, the one obscure key that Ben didn't possess. My blood ran cold. After everything, to fail on some obscure regional dialect felt like a cosmic joke of the cruelest kind. I watched Ben, my heart sinking with every passing second of his silence. His gaze was locked on the Bernese lawyer, his expression unreadable. Then Ben blinked slowly, as if coming out of a trance. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of his mouth. He cleared his throat and responded. The words that came out were not in the guttural dialect Dubois had used. Instead, Ben spoke in a slow, careful Latin, ancient classical Latin. He looked directly at the lawyer and said, "Juris precepta sunt haec, honeste vivere, alterum non laedere, sumquique tribuere." The precepts of the law are these: to live honestly, to not harm another, to give to each his own. A collective gasp went through the room. The Bernese lawyer's jaw literally dropped. He looked as if he'd seen a ghost. Ben didn't stop. He continued in Latin, his voice resonating with an academic authority that seemed utterly out of place for a simple driver. He explained that while he was not fluent in the specific Swiss-German dialect of Bern, a dialect heavily influenced by Old Alemannic and rarely used in modern legal contexts, he recognized its roots. He explained that all modern European legal frameworks, especially those concerning contract law in Switzerland, were fundamentally based on Roman law. Therefore, to ensure absolute clarity and avoid any potential ambiguity that a niche dialect might create, it was best to discuss the principle of the addendum in the foundational language of the law itself. Then, with the precision of a surgeon, he deconstructed the principle of what Dubois had proposed, without needing to know the exact words. "You are proposing a clausula rebus sextantibus," he stated, switching back to crisp English, "a clause that allows for the contract to become inapplicable because of a fundamental change of circumstances. But you are applying it not to an unforeseen external event, but to internal performance metrics. It's a clever attempt to build in a back door, an escape hatch if your domestic market projections don't meet their 5-year targets." He then turned to me. "Ms. Vance, this is not a small addendum. It's a poison pill." The room was electric. Dubois stared at Ben, his predatory grin gone, replaced by a look of profound, unadulterated respect. He had tried to lay a complex legal trap, using obscurity as his weapon, and my associate had not only seen it, he had disarmed it using the legal equivalent of a nuclear bomb. He hadn't just translated, he had outmaneuvered a top corporate lawyer on his own turf. Dubois was silent for a long moment, then he threw his head back and laughed. It was not a mocking laugh, but a genuine, booming laugh of appreciation. "Magnifique!" he roared, slapping the mahogany table. "Absolutely magnificent. Miss Vance, you are a woman of hidden talents, or rather, you employ them." He looked at Ben. "What is your name again, sir?" "Ben Carter," he replied simply. "Well, Mr. Carter," Dubois said, extending a hand across the table, "you have earned my respect. The addendum is withdrawn." He then looked at me. "Miss Vance, the deal is yours. The original terms are accepted." The relief was so sudden and overwhelming that I felt light-headed. We spent another hour finalizing the details, but the tension was gone. There were handshakes, smiles, and even a bottle of champagne. Throughout it all, Ben stood quietly in the background, his work done. As we walked back to the car, the city lights of Zurich were beginning to sparkle against the twilight sky. The rain had stopped. I was still reeling, trying to reconcile the man who hummed quietly in the driver's seat with the linguistic and strategic genius who had just saved my career. "Ben," I began, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." He opened the car door for me, his expression as placid as it had been that morning. "There's nothing to say, ma'am." "No," I insisted, stopping him before he could walk around to his side. "I need to say something. I am so sorry. The way I spoke to you, the things I said, it was arrogant and cruel and unforgivable." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw the full depth of the kindness in his eyes. "Everyone has their own road, Miss Vance. Sometimes the traffic is bad. It makes people say things they don't mean." "Who are you, Ben?" I asked, the question bursting out of me. He smiled faintly. "I was a professor once. Comparative linguistics and ancient legal history at Cambridge. But life happens. My wife got sick, the treatments were expensive, the academic world is political. I found I preferred the quiet. Driving gives me time to think and to listen." We got in the car, the plush leather a world away from the battlefield of the boardroom. He started the engine, and we pulled out into the Zurich night. I was no longer watching the clock. The $10 billion deal was done, but I knew with absolute certainty that it was not the most valuable thing I had acquired that day. I had been taught a lesson in humility by a man I had judged worthless. He had built an empire of knowledge within himself, quietly, while I was chasing empires of glass and steel. As we drove, he turned on the radio, and a soft classical piece filled the car. He began to hum along, the same gentle tune from that morning, and this time I just sat back and listened.